The other day I asked you guys, what is your MLBB dream match? Any team, any region, any era, best of 7. This is Throwback Throwdown. A bunch of you guys came through on social media, and I appreciate every single one who commented, and I would love to get to every single match someday, but we're starting off with a very popular one. We're going back to December 2021 and checking out Blacklist International from M3 versus December 2023's AP Bren from M5. We're going to be looking at each lineup, which lanes win, the early to late game advantages, how much time I think most of these matches will take, what the final score is, and the pros and cons from each match, and the circumstances I think they'll be playing under. First up, let's talk about Blacklist International. Prior accolades up to that point in this era of Black would be their Season 7 and Season 8 championships. The M3 Blacklist lineup is made up of Edward, Haji, Wise, Oh My Venus, and Oheb. They'll be facing off against AP Bren's main 5, who up to that point won MPL Philippines Season 12 and multiple other international tournaments, with a highlight being SEA Games 2023. AP Bren is made up of Flap TZ, Few, Kyle TZ, Ogwin, and Super Marco. Looking at a lane per lane basis, I think Blacklist International wins the XP lane and the Roam. XP mainly because Edward is super consistent and Oh My Venus is god tier shot calling. So say what you will about mechanics and moment-to-moment gameplay, but when it comes to really rallying a team and making Blacklist move as one, Oh My Venus defines that play style and makes it possible for Blacklist International to reach the heights they have. So they win on those two fronts. AP Bren, I think, trumps the jungle and gold. Jungle mainly because Kyle TZ has proven that he is capable of playing assassins, utilities, tanks, and mechanically, no offense to Wise, Dannery, I love you, but Kyle TZ is a genetic freak. Like, people gasp when he gets his hands on a Ling and a Fanny and a Hayabusa. Super Marco, on the other hand, I think is good independent, is good winning, is good on the comeback. And as much as I love the Filipino sniper, especially since this is his prime, you're talking about M3 Blacklist, I think we're yet to reach Super Marco's peak even today, even almost a year removed from their M5 win. So Bulletproof Marco, Super Makmak, all of this was yet to come post M5, and already I think here, even with the MVP Filipino sniper in Blacklist's roster, I think Super Marco trumps him at that. Now that leaves a question of mid. Mainly, Blacklist International played Haji in mid. However you could define mid at the time, given that he and Oh My Venus would swap around. And then you have Few, of course, who seemingly does not have a cap, seemingly seems to just keep playing and keep improving and moving on from era to era to era. So I found it personally hard for me to say who wins that mid lane matchup. So I think we'll put the laning at 2 and 2 with a wash at mid. Looking at the pros and cons of each squad, Blacklist International has amazing macro, they pioneered Ube, and they are masters of the Lord Dance, like Channing Tatum level of Lord Dance. And I'm not talking about Magic Mike here, I'm talking about Step Up. Was Channing Tatum in Step Up? All I'm saying is Lord Dance is hard to beat Blacklist International. Best believe Edward can manage the long lane and join the fight in T minus 2 seconds. Like, he's just somehow always there, even without playing Benedetta. You know what I mean? Cons of the team would be they are very momentum based, because look back at history, Season 11, M4, those are things. M3, that's a thing. Season 8, that's a thing. So Blacklist winning is Blacklist winning. Blacklist not in control, it's a whole nother story. And another con, I think, is on an individual level, Blacklist might be all over the place. Sometimes 1 or 2 roles would be on point, and sometimes the others would not. That's when they're not coming in as one. That's where Oh My Venus X Factor comes in. And luckily, in their prime, that was enough to push Blacklist over the top, and they were just, I think, honestly speaking, innovative enough to change the game at such a pace that other teams were not ready for it, and that's what allowed for them to be dominant for the majority of 2 or 3 years. Talking about AP Bren's pros and cons, oddly enough, they are a hybrid team. They are very good at macro, very good at micro, and you can't really fault any of them for the most part on either. Like you can't count them out. Like sometimes you would see amazing moments of micro masterpieces, and sometimes the macro would just be so good they're able to choke out their opponents. Which brings me into their second pro is they are so good at resource denial. They're so good at taking out vision, taking out certain parts of the map, taking out specific lanes, denying heroes of farm and XP, and maybe after TNC in Season 9, wherein they played Lolita, Lilia, and Ben Things was going insane with the Franco, AP Bren might be the next best incarnation of that playstyle of just denying their opponents, choking out resources, EXP gold in as early as 2 or 3 minutes starting. And another reason why I think AP Bren is a world-class championship caliber team, regardless of what happens to them, despite the ups and downs, is they have an amazing reset. The way they're able to go 7 games, 6 games, season after season, tournament after tournament, and still keep a high quality of gameplay consistently shows that more than just their game, more than just the way they play, something inside of them, that their fundamentals are so sound that they're able to do this. And you can't train that. You can't buy that. You can't. That's something that came through years of training together, playing together, and knowing each other so well that I'll count that as a massive pro. Cons, though, sometimes they get a little too spicy. Sometimes they play strats that at the time would be questionable, that at the time would be, why would you do that? And the results speak for themselves. I'm talking about Season 11 Florin. I'm talking about Game 7 Eve. These are things that if they changed maybe a little bit, the outcome would totally just be different. And again, that's key to their reset, but that's also part of their cons. They've lost a lot of matches, a lot of games, a lot of championships because of these spicy picks. And I think this is something that coincides with another con of theirs, is their bouts of inconsistency. A lot of people would say, that is not very Falcons AP Bren. That is not how the world champions should be playing. What's going on? Like, they got swept by this team. They lost this tournament here. Like, what's going on? But now, after a long sample size of, matches and tournaments and games being together as a team, you know that that's part of their MO. That's sometimes they have these dips. Sometimes even the best of them, Flap TZ, has amazing spikes, and then sometimes he just dips. You could say the same for Super Marco. Sometimes, like, I didn't even feel Marco. Yeah, he didn't die, but he really didn't do much. Falcons AP Bren kind of has that in their genes. It's in their DNA. Now, talking about the circumstances from in which they played their tournaments, wherein they hit their peak, in M3, oddly enough, there was a larger gap amongst teams' skills and power scales. Because again, this was in, I'd say, post-pandemic. MLBB is still slowly on the rise, and the strong regions were the strong regions. I'm talking about PH, I'm talking about ID, I'm talking about MY, SG. That's who hosted the tournament. They were pretty good there. And all the other regions were just, like underdogs. Everyone else was the dark horse. So if somebody did something good from those other regions, you would remember. And I think that's what makes Blacklist a step above everyone else. This is where they lost to BTK, and that already shook us. In M4, M5, we were expecting a lot from NA. We were expecting a lot from other teams already. And dark horses came through the lower bracket, through the wild card. And that's what I think defined the M5 era. That's what defined their gameplays, because a lot of those games either went 10, 11 minutes or went upwards of 25, 30 minutes, if you'll remember. So that means we know what to expect from the world as a whole, but also gameplay has been perfected and defined to a point wherein it comes down to a game-to-game basis. Because even the finals, even the Game 7 finals between AP Bren and Onyx ID at the time had these swings. They would trade games back and forth, 11 minutes, 12 minutes. Some of them went past 20, and that's what defined these two eras. Now going into the matchup itself, all right? Talking about Blacklist International from M3 going head-to-head against AP Bren from M5. Let's go to the early to late. Early game, I'm going to give the advantage to AP Bren. I think if you're talking about lane to lane, again, I'm going to stick to my guns, wherein each team wins 2-2. But when you spread out the effort, when you spread out the strengths, AP Bren is better up until we reach the mid-game to the late game ramp up. If Blacklist International survives most of their mid-game to late game ramps, that's where the Oh My Venus X Factor kicks in. That's because when lane to lane, Edward down to Oheb, they're kitted up, they have their items, they have the XP, they have their skills. Lanes may need some management, but that's where when Oh My V says, do this, do this, do this, okay, we can. And then that's where the 50-50s happen. And if the gambits from AP Bren don't work out, if whatever the hell Flapteasy wants to try, what Ogun wants to try, if these don't happen, then Blacklist can punish you so hard. And that's where they make it through. That's the big caveat though. They have to make it through that 1 to 10, 11 minute mark. If AP Bren has not beaten you down so hard and it choked you out so hard that you can, reasonably survive and push it, then maybe Blacklist has a chance. That's what we're getting at here. And now comes in the factor of Blacklist International is a momentum-based team. If AP Bren is able to break your spirit hard enough, I'm talking about Season 13, going through the playoffs, break your spirit type of gameplay, then talking about brass tacks, let's get down to business here. I think AP Bren is going to take this. 4-1. I think the score is going to be 4-1, and the average game time is going to be 14 minutes to 25. The 25-minute games are where it comes close, and maybe that's the one that Blacklist can win. That's what I'm seeing in my head. But a majority of the games, AP Bren can win at like 15, 16 minutes, and then like one game at 13 or 12. But that's my take on it. That's how I see this throwback throwdown going down. 4-1, I think AP Bren from M5 will win, mainly because of how they take advantage of resource denial, Blacklist's reliance on momentum, and their need to hit a mid to late game ramp wherein Oh My Venus' shot calling just reigns superior. I think that's the point of contention here. That's how I see this throwback throwdown going down. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Share this with a friend, whoever wanted to see what a hypothetical matchup between the M3 and M5 world champions would look like. And let me know what kind of matchup you want to see next. Again, I'm talking any team, any region, any era, best of 7. This has been Leo at your service, and this has been Throwback Throwdown.